So how do you come up with the mechanism? Well, it could be a very long, tedious process, or it could be very, very short. If you are building a tech company, if you're building an actual real product, then this is probably the R&D phase where you spend a lot of time trying to figure it out. Post-it notes were the obvious mechanism there is the glue that is used to just stick things to a piece of whatever and then peel them off without leaving the residue. So that's the mechanism behind a post-it note. That took 3M having a R&D factory, and I think that one was arrived at by happy accident. One of the researchers combined some chemicals he didn't intend to, and all of a sudden arrived at that type of adhesive. If you are a tech company, if you're in the world of bioengineering or chemical engineering, then this is coming up with your mechanism is research and development. If you are not, if you are an info marketer like I have been, then we can talk about some other ways to do it. So you could invent a new technology. That's research and development. You could combine a few current technologies. You could find a new benefit to an old technology, or you could make it up entirely. So inventing a new technology would be, let's say that intermittent fasting is a bit of a new technology. So that if you've not tried intermittent fasting, it's the idea that you fast for 16 hours a day and then eat for 8 hours a day, or feed, as I believe as they call it. So that's a bit of a new technology. It's a way to eat that is attempting to moderate your hormonal response and put on muscle in the most efficient fat burning way possible. So that's a simple way of inventing a new technology, I suppose we could say. 3M or Tesla would be a more complicated one. You could combine a few current technologies. So off the top of my head, I'm trying to think of one of these. Perhaps Tesla would be combining a few current technologies. Batteries plus car equals electric car, but there's just been a little bit of money thrown into that R&D, just a little bit, a few $100 million or more. You could find a benefit to an old technology. So, when I think about this one, I think about my friend Brad's weight loss product, where they said, hey, there's this type of workout, and, this workout does one thing, but, it's kind of a weight loss workout, but it actually, the real benefit is it modulates your hormonal response, and it activates your leptin switch, and then you just shed fat, and that is that. So that's a sort of a new benefit to an old technology, or you could just make up a mechanism entirely. Like we've done this. The obsession story is something I completely made up. I put a name to something, a set of concepts that I came up with. I've read ads. I remember a toothpaste ad back from the 50s, and it's escaped. The brand is escaping me, and so is the exact claim. But they claimed that there is a specific problem with your mouth, and that their toothpaste solved that specific problem. And it was really just giving a fancy name to fluoride and plaque. But, they made up the mechanism in this case as something that the fluoride did. And you can get very creative with it. This is what marketing teams are paid for. So what is your mechanism? How are you going to choose it? Well, it should have a unique and memorable name. With ours, we've got things like the obsession story, the yes sequence, even operant conditioning. It's something that is memorable because chances are people have heard it. And it's best to have a genuinely great technology. I made up the obsession story, but it is something legitimate. It exists in the world now as a type of knowledge, whether somebody thinks it's science, pseudoscience, or what have you. It is something that has helped people and which is, to a certain degree, a new technology. It'd be much, perhaps more honorable to have invented the iPhone or, the Tesla or electricity. But it's ideal if you can have a genuinely great breakthrough technology. But if that's not possible, then you can take elements of what you do and give them a name. I've seen this extensively in the world of selling pills and nootropics and supplements. People will take something that already exists and they'll give it a name. So something like micronized creatine, which is just creatine that's been powdered even more and perhaps a little easier to to digest. So how do you do that? Where do you get the inspiration for that? Well, read the science and the art within your market. Read journals, read trade publications, read books, and figure out what people are saying about, the science or the art, or, in the case of transformation, psychology in your market, and start picking names from there. So that is, again, the way that I would approach getting a mechanism in place. Take elements of what you do, give them a name, and try to pull those names in from things that already exist in your market. We've been through some of our mechanisms already. We've broken down why they exist, but let's ask, how do we really create a mechanism? So this goes back to, how do you really create a big idea? What is the step-by-step process to do it? So you're going to start by looking at your product's features and figuring out what the most compelling of those features are for your market. There's that biplane again. That's a loud one. So looking at your product's features and finding the most compelling features for your market. So, in the case of Ignition, we've got a whole bunch of stuff in there. We've got stuff about the journey to become a more confident man. We've got stuff about how to talk to women. We think at this point the how to talk to women market is completely saturated, and the how to become a more confident man market is something that's still evolving. So we're going to take that part of it and build out the narrative around how to become a natural, or whatever that becomes. And if you don't have a product already, great. You can you're basically starting with your mechanism. You're a tinkerer, you're an inventor, and you have a blank canvas. So if you, if in either case, once you've got your product, you're going to get your big idea. Your big idea is the big promise that you're making, and kind of how it happens. And you want to fill in that question: how does my promise make this happen? So in the case of Ignition, and I'm completely spitballing at this point, but it might be something, will make you a complete natural by women by teaching you the natural's journey, the stick-step process to go from 0 to hero in 6 weeks or less. That sounds very copy-ish and hypey. I would probably rewrite that based on the sophistication of the market. But, that would be the mechanism, the hero's journey, or the ignited path, or some such thing. So that is how my product will make that happen. You want to certainly include any relevant research or technology. So if we're taking the example of Ignition, I could talk about neuroplasticity. This is something that my copywriters and I have been brainstorming. Neuroplasticity is the idea that your mind can change, and the actual shape of your brain can change based on different stimuli, different beliefs, and different experiences. Another one that we're talking about is the power of habits, and how different habits can create different outcomes. So either of those could be the science behind the mechanism, and I could say, I'll take you on the Ignition journey, a 6-week series of habits that are going to ignite the natural inside of you. Or we could say, Ignition relies on neuroplasticity, the idea that your brain can change based on certain experiences. So we're going to put you out in the world, and every week you're going to have a new experience, and that is going to cause you to become a natural. You can see how quickly you can generate these. And then, of course, you've got to do the next thing, which is beat the shit out of it. So we'll get to that one in a second. The other step actually in this process, which I'm discussing right now, is brainstorming and bullshitting. So my copywriters and I, we get on the phone, we talk about this, and we just brainstorm with each other. We come up with stuff. It literally is the definition of bullshitting. It's just bringing ideas in and coming up with whatever sounds interesting to us. And from there, trying to apply real things to it. So trying to apply real research, real technology. When they come in with those ideas of neuroplasticity or habits leading to good outcomes, that is real research, and we want to eventually figure out, well, how do we put that into the product, or what about the product already fulfills those things? So brainstorming, bullshitting would be step 4. Then beating the shit out of it is step 5. So really trying, and that's what you heard me just doing a bit of right now is, okay, well, why wouldn't neuroplasticity be a good thing? Is that too big of a word for guys? Are they going to believe that they can make that change that quickly? Is this something that people even want? Do they want to change their brain shape? Do they believe that's possible? So you really want to beat up your idea and try to come up with a whole bunch of objections for it, which we'll be getting to in the next section or two. Of course, no brainstorming would be complete without channeling the spirit. So that had to be part of the steps. Could be step 1, it could be step 5, but channeling the spirit is certainly important. and then writing and revising. So I find that especially with what we do, the mechanism and the way I describe it evolves as I write. So I'll write it out, I'll brainstorm it, I'll beat it up, I'll write it again, and I'll keep writing it until I'm really, really clear and can explain the mechanism in a way that anybody could look at and say, okay, that can plausibly and reliably solve my problems, and I want to purchase that piece of tech or that thing. So that's another way to think about it, is when somebody buys the girlfriend system, they are buying my mechanism, which is the obsession story. When somebody buys Say Hello, they're buying the mechanism, which is the yes sequence. When somebody buys a Tesla, they are buying an electric car that can go 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds. And it's the electric car, it's the mechanism of how it all works together. So, you really want to spend your time getting this one right, because when people are buying your product, ultimately what they are buying is the result and the way that it's going to deliver that result. They believe that it's going to deliver that result because you've convinced them that it's going to deliver that result, and it sounds plausible to them. So along those lines, how do you know if you've got a good mechanism? It's easy to communicate. Most of the things I express to you are pretty easy to communicate. It's not a one-sentence sort of communication, but it should be a one-paragraph communication. So I'm not going to run through all those ones again, but if you go back, if you listen to this again, you can hear how all the different mechanisms we discussed are pretty simple to communicate in a paragraph or less. It should stick in your prospect's mind. So V-power does not stick in my prospect's mind. But if I tell you, hey, I've got a coffee with mushrooms in it, and by adding the mushrooms, you don't get any jitters, that probably sticks in your mind. If the George Foreman, if you say, hey, well, what's this all about? Why is it different? I say, well, most sandwich makers are flat, and so they trap the fat, but this sandwich maker is angled, so fat drizzles right out. You can see it, you visualize it, you can see the fat leaving the foreman, and you can imagine yourself having lower fat meals, which you might not want if you're paleo, but then again, paleo didn't really exist when the foreman was new and exciting. So along those lines, it's fresh and new to your market. All the things that we've discussed are things that have not been sold to a market before, and it's not a mechanism that they've heard about before. When we came out with the obsession story and the notion of romance novels, no one else was selling this to our market, and then everybody else got on that bandwagon, and all of a sudden I started seeing in every sales letter, you're going to tap into secrets that women have hidden from you in books like 50 Shades of Grey. So your mechanism should be new to your market, very exciting, and something that presumably other people might want to copy. If you think about it as a technology, it's something that you might want to patent. It easily solves the problem of, that'll never work for me. I love that promise, but that I could never get that. I just don't believe that that's possible. So if your mechanism can easily and plausibly solve that promise, and overcome that objection, this would never work for me. I'm not good enough, smart enough, tall enough, short enough, athletic enough, rich enough, whatever it is, then that is a fantastic mechanism. And finally, people say, wow, that sounds really interesting, or I'd really like to see that, or I'd really like to know that. Any of the mechanisms that I describe from our courses, when I tell them to people, there's just a natural curiosity of like, oh, really? Like, that exists? I can't believe it. Well, I'd actually be really curious to see that. What did you find from literotica novels? So let's repeat those again. How do you know you've got a good mechanism? It's easy to communicate. You can say it within a paragraph. It sticks in your prospect's mind. They can visualize it, they can see it, they understand it. It's fresh and it's new to your market. It's not a rehash of something that someone else said. It's plausible and it's easily explainable by science and reason. People can say, okay, yeah, I get how that works. It easily solves the problem of, that'll never work for me. Man, I just don't know. So it easily solves that problem. And when people hear it, even if they're not part of your target market, they're likely to say, wow, that sounds really interesting, and I would be interested in seeing that. So that's how you know that you've got a great mechanism. So with that, I hope that you will go and you will brainstorm your mechanism. And by the time you come back, I am going to be wearing a new shirt because it will be a new day. And I hope it's a new day for you too, because you've got a lot of brainstorming to do right now. And next up, we're going to talk about decision-making theory and objections that your prospects are going to have. and how you are going to help them overcome their objections. From there, we'll get into proof, trust, and authority. Man, we got so much good stuff to get through. I'm so excited for you, but for now, go to your brainstorming, channel the spirit if you must, and see what you come up with.